Well, hey there, folks. John Duffin here, Duffin Media. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another round of JD's KILLA Conversations as we take a daily glance, look, review, perusal of optimal situations to help you optimize your communications. What are we doing here? If this is your first time, welcome aboard. You get to join us in any number of ways, which is either on Facebook Live, if you happen to be catching me today, or LinkedIn Live, or YouTube Live. Any one of those three platforms, I am right here coming at you live. I already see a thumbs up. That's pretty awesome. By the way, again, if it's your first time, second time, every day, we love it. We welcome you. We include you. And if you happen to be here, drop a note in the comments of whatever your chosen platform is, and I will know that you are here, which then I get to acknowledge you, communicate with you a little bit better. Just makes me overall happy. So what do we get to do? I drop some tips, communication tips, top tips, situational techniques that have helped me in my career to be able to optimize communications, and I get to share that with you. Ultimately, the goal is to make certain that each day, every day, you get to take the tip or technique or bonus techniques and use them same day to make your communications better and stronger. That's the whole point. We like to make them easy enough, bite-sized enough, so there is not a lot of ramp-up time. That's what we get to do. And how do we do it? We do this with, we bring you a situation here, and typically it's and no, not typically. It happens one of two ways, which is number one, either I've absolutely experienced the situation and have lived to move past the situation. Whether it was the exact tip or technique or someone helped me with that tip or technique, whatever it is real life situations. That's what I bring into play. That's based on the experience, or someone has made a specific suggestion and or request. And by the way, I wanted to touch on this today because let me give you the setup. And by the way, what we do is we bring up a specific situation. So I'm going to bring that situation into play right now. Folks, here is the situation. And for me, it's a fun one. And I say that almost sarcastically, right? Fun wouldn't exactly be the way to describe the situation. But I want to ask you, anybody that's here live, chime in. Has this ever happened to you? And what this means is this: you're making decisions or you're communicating decisions to multiple people. And typically your decision impacts more than one person. Anybody here that's in a management position where you are managing individuals? Anyone? Well, I've gotten the chance to do that over my career on a long basis. So here's the wild card. Have you been in situations where you had to communicate the same message to multiple people where it impacts them in different ways? Huh? Anyone? So this will be, as I repeat, we're going to say a fun one. And I mean, sometimes uncomfortable can be fun when you come through the other side. So let me give you the situation, right? You happen to have multiple persons involved in a communications chain, perhaps multiple levels of management and executives. And you've got to have some tough conversations about future decisions. Like, for instance, I've decided to, or management has suggested that we raise your revenue goals or move accounts or something that is uncomfortable. The key, though, is it affects everyone differently of the multiples. Not everyone is affected the same way, right? Now, you as the fearless leader and someone who hates hurting feelings, I don't know why that resonates with me. You don't want to alienate anyone. You don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. You don't want to cause friction. So you wind up having separate conversations with the individuals. And you start to notice the tension is ensuing across the board, which is the last thing that you need. So as I say, dear diary, how do I make everyone happy? That's our situation. And I say that with a laugh, but my God, it's one of the tougher bits of communicating that you can do. And by the way, this resonates, permeates whether you are talking to your management team and or the client, whether you are an entrepreneur and you are talking to multiple vendors. Folks, anybody here from the real estate world? I get to work with a lot of real estate people, a lot of communications. How many people are involved in a listing and or a closing of a real estate transaction? How many people? Huh? Anyone? Anyone? Well, I'll help you. It's almost like an endless list of people. And you've got one communication that has occurred, whether it is good news or bad news. And you've got to communicate it multiple times because it impacts everyone differently. Like, for instance, I come to the broadcast ad sales world, right? And I'll give you an example that used to happen all the time, right? Senior leaders would say, hey, we're not having enough traction with one of our events or television specials or activities or live in-person situations. So here's what we're going to do. And this message is being conveyed to you. Here's what we need you to do, John. I'll speak for me. We need you to tell your salespeople that if they are not closing enough of whatever the best deal of the day happens to be, well, then we're going to be holding special training sessions to keep them here. And by the way, those training sessions will be at end of day because it's really a priority that this event is closed because we have money on the books from it. So here's a question for everybody here. How many people could be potentially involved in these multiple situations of a singular decision? I'm going to share with you, right? So, because I know for me, this is one of the most angst-filled situations that I deal with. I still deal with it on a regular basis. So for myself, one of the things I think about is the sense of I've got to tell, in this specific instance, I got to tell my salespeople, we got a problem here. We're not closing enough. We got to do something about it. And I have to have individual conversations with the salespeople. So it could be one person. It could be a team of people, but I'm counting that as one entity. Now, two, you have to have communications with the person that gave you that decree. Senior leadership. Call that managing up. This sounds like an insult when I talk about your team of salespeople and I say managing down. That obviously they're the bread and butter of your organization. I simply mean they are your direct report, so to speak. So you have some managerial control. So you're talking to your senior leadership. You're talking to your sales team. Who else might be involved in a group sort of decision? Maybe it's the vendor that is promoting the event. Maybe it is the facility. Maybe it is the hard, difficult client that might be like, so you have to have multiple conversations. I'm looking and fishing for something right now because it really is tied so much to what I have talked about over and over and over. I go back to this question. You think you're doing the right thing by having these separate solo conversations, but what you're doing is causing confusion. I ask, have you ever had a conversation, a presentation, or an encounter in business where you received surprisingly negative feedback? and you just couldn't figure it out. You think you've got this handled. You think you're speaking to everybody appropriately, and it's just not rolling. Let me help you here. Let me help you. There's a, oh my God, I'm using a wrestling analysis. That's embarrassing, but it's true. Let me talk to you. Bonus points. If anyone in the group here, the group chat, singles out who is the personality that literally says right now, pretty damn famous. Let me talk to you. So let me talk to you. Your tip of the day. Direct, streamlined communications are always preferred. Any sort of added embellishment often comes back and hits you in the face. Okay? So you have senses where you got to talk to multiple people about a singular thing, and it's not easy. What's the best way to go about it? Looking for feedback, folks. What would be the best way with multiple individuals or groups to communicate a singular decision? Yeah, together en masse. And if you can have the conversation in person or over the phone, what do I mean? No typing, right? Have the communication. Virtual, phone, in person. Maybe in that order, backwards, right? In person, phone, virtual. So that everyone is in alignment in terms of what you are saying. Do you know what else it does too? It stops you from embellishing, playing favorites, picking up other people. Oh, look, I wouldn't say this to you, Bob, because I think you're wonderful. But the boss said we have to sell more, so I have to do blah, blah, blah. And then you go back to someone else and say, well, look, you're really coming up short here. So we need you to pick up the slack. In fact, that's not just me saying it. That's senior leadership is noticing you're really coming up short, And then you say to your senior leadership, I don't know what to do with these people. I think you're so right. But I tell them how important it is, and they just don't seem to be listening. So here's what I'm saying with you. You want to know why you're alienating people? You want to know with your singular message why you're creating a problem? In business, it's this. It's inconsistency. Take a stand, make the stand, be as kind and as human as possible. But as someone who is allowed to make a decision, you are, right? Understand two things. Number one, you're allowed to make the decision. Number two, every decision you communicate does have a ripple effect, consequences, so to speak. Okay? So that happens. Know that. So why that matters is it reminds you to be really careful when you communicate, because there's always a ripple effect in the communication. Always, always, always. No one keeps secrets. No one should. Don't tell Marianne there, but I think she's the problem. Don't. You're the problem when you do something foolish like that. So, in a perfect world, you speak to everyone together. You remember that if you were being entrusted to make a communication to one person or a group, you speak to that one person or group together, right? Forces you to remain consistent. Everybody hears something at the same time, and then you do not have to be putting out a series of fires later on. Okay? Any questions on that? Number one, these difficult communications that involve more than one person and there's a ripple effect, have it together. Have it together. Ask everyone together. Do they understand correctly? Do they understand what you are saying? Make certain that everyone in the room, on the phone, virtually hears you the way that you intended. Folks, I host a podcast called Your Message Received. All of the training courses that I do, I call it Your Message Received simply because are you communicating your intended message? Are people getting what you're intended to say? Doesn't make you right. It simply means what is your intention and do they communicate it? Rosalie McKenzie, I think you are one of my heroes. And so I'm grateful that you are here and that you're contributing. So I got to make a decision. If you're in a position where that is part of your responsibility, make the decision, but communicate it together. Now, that's one, right? What if that's not possible? Like I came from a corporation, I came from several, as a matter of fact, and in more than one situation, there were multiple offices in multiple states with multiple this and multiple that. So I didn't really have that privilege of having everyone in a room together with me when I made every decision. I'm going to give you an example. Early in my managerial, let me say that better. Speak a little faster, get a little heated up. Let me try that a little bit better. I'm going to give you an example, two, as a matter of fact. One very, very, very early in my managerial career. One of those situations, I'll give it to you, where I'd love to have been able to get it back. We'll just say I learned. And I was having two distinctly different conversations in a television station between one personnel member and the president and general manager. Two different conversations, because again, I didn't want to hurt feelings. Like I told you, these come from real life things. I had the one person literally explode when they realized that I was having a different conversation. I point upward. The manager, the president and the general manager of that television station, her office was upstairs. So sometimes out of force of habit, I do that, right? But that was also her position. She owned the company. And when that other person learned I was having a different conversation, it literally shook me to my core. Why? Because that person checked me and they had every right to do so. And it physically sickened me. And this is what I learned. Don't do it. Simply don't do it. If you know something and you're aware of something, now you may not need to be able to divulge every single detail. So you need to at least temper where we are. God, thank you, Rosalie. I really appreciate this. This one I feel, right? So what I'm saying is this, but the gist of the communication, it's one. It's the same tone of voice, same level of compassion. That's take two. You're dealing with human beings. You don't get the right to snap at one and suck up to another. It's a quote I may have to use for another training. You don't get the right to snap at one and suck up to another. There's your life lesson for the day. You don't. They're all human beings. So use all of the compassion that you can muster. Be kind. How many times do you hear that? Be kind. You can make difficult decisions. I need you to sell more. Senior leadership. John, we need these people to sell more. Folks, we need to sell more. But here's the last in terms of today, what I highly recommend you don't do. Do not deflect. Well, he said to tell you. Well, I'm just stepping away. I'm just telling you to talk to so-and-so. Don't do it. If you are entrusted, how do you know that you're entrusted? Talk to me. How do you know that you're entrusted in a company to make difficult decisions? How do you know? I'll start. Hey, your boss may tell you. That's a good way to know, right? John, I need you too. And they're your boss. Trust their process. Okay. Your response back is not, why don't you tell them? Here's why. Number two, They're paying you. They're paying you money. They've given you a title. They've given you a job description. That should be your clue. That you get the right to make decisions. But what you don't get the right to do is undermine, tell different stories, tell different situations. It just blows up in your face. The other people, they'll go on living their lives. You know, you give a tough translation to a business decision to someone. What are the consequences? Like reminding you, every communication has a ripple effect. Right? Every communication has some sort of ramifications. Don't forget it. Don't let it scare you either. Okay? But just know that that's so. Know that that's so. There is no communication in a vacuum. None. Right? Instructing people with financials, your goals, your priorities. If you're in a position, how do you know? Your job description tells you that. The check that you get from your company tells you that. Typically, that's how you know, right? And if you're unsure, ask the person that brought you on board. They'll know. So you get the ability to make decisions and communicate decisions. If that's you, and the only people that it's not would be if you're the first person hired in an organization, if you're the bottom rung of the org chart, well, chances are you have very little decision-making ability. You're just fulfilling responsibilities. If you are anyone else, well, then you get to make some decisions. You don't get to make all of them, but you get to make some decisions, and you get the inherent ability that you need to communicate it. So again, remember, of the same general mantra, I'm leaving you with a few tips today. Number one, for your next communication, remember this. Every communication to your client, to your colleagues, to your vendors, to your partners, to your leadership team has a ramification. Do not let that intimidate you, okay? Some people will then say, well, I don't want to talk to you. Well, you need to. So how do you handle it? Right here, Duffin Media, we're all about optimizing your communications by leveraging your voice. How can you make difficult decisions? Want to do a quick 1, 2, 3? Let's do it. We've covered some of this in prior sessions. It's not a pop quiz. It's a reminder. We're going to do this without slides today, simply in the sense we're going to call this a lightning round, okay? But I want to be able to go through a few tips in terms of how you are able to have a singular, same type of communication to multiple people at multiple times, all right? I'll start, and then hopefully you'll be able to jump in, and that's fine. And maybe there'll be a fabulous prize at the end, and maybe there won't be. That as direct as I can be in terms of the fabulous prizes. But you know how you can do it into communication? And again, over the phone, in person, virtual. Number one, don't be distracted. Each conversation, each communication is singular in purpose. So, how do you make something going to multiple people singular in person? Singular in purpose? Number one, focus on them. I'm looking and fishing. I'm doing it intentionally. Rosalie, I'm only doing this because you're the. Okay. All right, Rosalie, look, here's what's going on. Yeah. All right, here's the problem. We're just not cutting it in regards to, oh my God, this phone won't stop. Have you ever had somebody do that to you? I'll bet I have. It's maddening because when you're talking about something which is big, it's big to you, and it's big to the other person, you got to focus. Put this away, right? 2, look at them. Make eye contact. I talk about watering the plants. Focus on the people that you know, right? When you have a communication, and this should be all communications, but especially when they are important or if they are not jovial, and they could be tense or they could be more singular in purpose, look at the person, focus on them, get rid of the distractions, and then focus on the person, right? Because people appreciate and respect that. Okay. Your voice. How would you sound? Here's what you risk when you're speaking to different people in different ways. You don't know. And I've learned this from experience. You don't know when you're going to get frustrated, when you're telling a bunch of multiple stories, or the old game. Anyone heard the game Whisper Down the Lane? Let's whisper down the lane. So, whisper down the lane is someone tells a story, and then the next person has to repeat the story based upon their recollection. And it goes through a series of people. Typically, the 10th person is telling an entirely different story than the first person. So, here's what you risk when you're telling different stories to different people, thinking you're making everybody feel good. It's the opposite. You're making at least one person feel bad. And then you get tense. And then you're now speaking more angrily. So how do you fix it? One communication, right? Basically the same way with everyone. In a company with multiple people, 2 or more, 2 to 10,000, or anywhere in the middle, you can always show compassion with your voice. Understand, again, remember that ripple effect, consequential effect comes from everything. Understand somebody's receiving the message. They're not going to love it. So how could you convey a message that's serious, but with empathy? Look at them. Speak with them. Feel what they could be feeling if someone shared that with you, right? If you're yucking it up, laughing or hollering or all over the place, they feel less than. Just trust me from experience, right? They feel less than. So they may jump, and then you may jump, and then everything blows up. So I don't want that to happen to you. We talk about a direct line of communications. How do you know when a communication is well received? Well, there's typically not a lot of over emoting. Somebody's not overly sad, happy, angry, right? You typically get some sort of compliance. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Do you understand? And by the way, take out things like, do you understand where I'm coming from? Nobody cares where it's coming from in your world. The reminder from yesterday, and at least 2 different times, it only matters when it matters to them. So nobody cares about how you feel. So when you're giving a direct message, leave out words like, do you understand where I'm coming from? Even words like, is this making sense? Sounds a little judgy. Here's what you could say. I just want to make sure I'm clear. Did I communicate the message clearly? Put it on you to make certain that they understand that you are trying to sound clear and succinct. Look at them, focus on them, speak with empathy. Okay? Don't be condescending. Now, I want you to repeat what you just heard me say. Sounds condescending. It's a good way to fan flames. Trust me, I know that. Repeat what I just said to you. You sound like a 4th grade teacher. Say to them point blank after you said what you're going to say. I just want to be sure I'm clear. I want to make certain because the message matters, and I'm sure it matters, and I won't speak for you, but I'm sure it matters to you. So I just want to be sure I'm 100% crystal clear. Once you get that affirmation, yes, I understand, then typically it is, okay, here's how I'm going to be monitoring and or checking in terms of the progress of this message. Make certain that your communication is consistent across the board. You're telling the same checkpoints thing. Here's how I'm going to monitor to your senior leadership. You're telling the same thing to your subordinates, your team, and you're telling the same thing to your colleagues, because the only thing that may be different is the reason why you're telling someone. That gets a little more personal. So try to leave the personal part out of it. Empathy is different than customizing. Keep that in mind. So those are your multiple tips for the day, going back to the situation. Again, what you don't want is having a tough conversation, telling it in different ways to different people, and then needing to put out flames across the board. I now need to go cheer this person up. I now need to make this person feel better. It happens. So who's the burden on before we leave? Who is the burden on to make certain that the communication is handled professionally with empathy and clarity? Who's that fall on? You. No one else. You. So I want you today to know that when you are communicating, remember this, take this with you. The next time you want to have a sidebar conversation, you want to go talk, remember the old water coolers? I don't think they do that anymore based on hygiene purposes. Remember those conversations? Watch, because again, every conversation has ramifications. You're speaking in one way, directly, succinctly, with empathy. When you live your life that way and when you communicate in business that way, you really increase the odds of getting your message received. So, folks, any questions before we break for the day? Well, you made me feel good, and that part helps me, right? Sometimes passion with me gets fueled in a couple of different ways. So, Rosalie and everybody who gave me some kind words and affirmations, I thank you for that. Take that with you today. Are you being empathetic to the person you're speaking with? And more importantly, listen up. Are you being empathetic to the person you're speaking about? Watch that stuff. Honest to God, watch that stuff. So, I will be back with another round tomorrow, which will be round 6, by the way. So we got a bonus round coming tomorrow. I'll send you the announcement and make certain that you're all aware. Join me on Facebook Live, LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live, where we get to optimize your communications by leveraging your voice. John Duffin here with Duffin Media, signing out. Way more to follow tomorrow, and I'm very excited. Have a fantastic day. Talk soon. Bye.